This is Zeke Zellmer. I was a fresh-caught ensign out of submarine school when I was assigned to Cavalla. Reported aboard on the 1st of January 1944 to put her in commission. She had several months of preparation still to be done. And so it was during that period that all the final equipment got put in and tested. And the crew was assembling in the process. I was one of the later ones to come aboard. Some had been there almost a year going through the construction process with Electric Boat Company because Cavalla was built.
Were you already in the service when the war started?
Before the war started, I went to the Naval Academy. One of those things. I'd been trying since 1938 to get to the academy.
So there was already a feeling that war was imminent.
As far as I was concerned, war was imminent, but also here was an ability to get college training in the Depression with Uncle Sam helping foot the bill.
Right.
I tried in 1938, which meant getting one of your state representatives to the Congress to appoint you. My senator had a statewide exam. He took the exam, and then he chose from those who had taken the exam, which would be usually several hundred people during the Depression, even more. The first year I was the second alternate. The first one got the appointment, and I was next in line. Did the same thing next year, same result. I was second in line, not first. So I went during this period to the University of Wisconsin Extension in Milwaukee in electrical engineering. I went east in the summer of 1940 to visit a girlfriend in Niagara Falls. And my mother called and said, "You have a presidential appointment, get down to Annapolis." And so that's how I got to the academy.
So where were you on December 8th, 1941?
I was in the academy in Annapolis.
So when you heard that news in Annapolis at the academy, it's a war institution, what was everybody's feelings?
Well, the situation at the time was so desperate worldwide that frankly we were saying, thank God it's over now, we're part of it, rather than we're standing aside and trying to be neutral but helpful. Mm-hmm. And frankly we felt that we were needed to accomplish beating Hitler and Tojo. Mm-hmm. And so it was a surprise how it happened, of course, but it was, frankly, for most of us, it was welcome. We were going to be able to get to do our job as we had joined up to do.
So the war is engaged, and are you in submarines right away? Or?
Oh, no. This was 41. The normal class runs 4 years. They condensed that to 3 years. We lost our summer cruises and a few other things and speeded up the academics. And so I actually graduated in June of 43. The war had been going on now for a year and a half. And
43 was a tough year. I mean, it wasn't determined that we were going to win.
No, it was very touch and go in the Pacific particularly, but also in Europe. And so I went from the Naval Academy to the submarine school, which had normally been 6 months, and instead we did it in 3. And then I got assigned to the Cavalla, and we had a couple months of preparation to go. I was, as I said, I think an ensign fresh caught out of the academy, really.
Did you want to be in a submarine, or was that assigned?
Submarines were then volunteer. You had to say you wanted it. When I went to the Naval Academy, I was all naval air. I had built model airplanes as a kid, World War II planes, or I planes, and that's where I was going to go. My roommate the first year at the academy was, I want to go to submarines. So after taps at night from our bunks, we'd have small arguments about which is better, submarines or naval air, or a number of other topics. We just liked to debate. And eventually, the time came for us to choose, which was our senior year, to get our orders. I had decided I wanted to go to submarines, and part of it was submariners had come back and briefed us on what they had been doing as did the Airedales and surface people and so on. And so I had changed my desires to submarines. It was voluntary. Surprisingly, my roommate had changed to naval air and he went into naval aviation. So we just reversed ourselves.
So you were assigned to the Cavalla. What did you think about seeing it for the first time?
Eager. You know, we got up to New London and got quarters the night before and reported on board. Of course, reporting on board didn't mean you were on board the submarine. It was still yard property and being constructed. So we had offices at the yard alongside and you'd come down to it, but we were not living aboard at that point. I was assigned as a communications officer. One of the reasons I wanted to go to submarines was it was a small ship and a lowly ensign would have a job of responsibility. And there I was, a department head as a brand buck new ensign, never having been on a submarine in a duty sense before, and totally overwhelmed by all the things I had to learn and do. The submariner has to learn to every valve on the boat, every instrument, every piece of equipment, and be able to operate it. In an emergency, something happens, you have to react to whatever is required where you are. You won't have time to go someplace else or to call some specialist to someplace. So,
You're living inside of a machine.
essentially, and the machine is air conditioned for the equipment,
There.
for the human's benefit. At any rate, I was a communicator. One day, and I guess I'd been aboard 2 weeks, maybe 3, the skipper said, "Zeke, you're the communicator." "Yes, sir." "Cavalla needs a symbol." "Yes, sir." "Produce one for me." "Aye, aye, sir." So I had to come ahead. I had to find out, first of all, what Cavalla was. Of course, all submarines were fish, that I knew, but what kind of a fish? Was it a nice fighting fish like a shark, which had been the boat I had hoped to go to? Or was it something that we ate and was kind of passive? Well, it turns out Cavalla is more the latter than the former. It's a fish that exists in the South American waters and up into the Caribbean. And so there was my first clue. I had an outline picture now of what the outline of the shark, or the Cavalla was. And I knew where it was in the ocean. Well, South American waters to me said Spanish. Spanish waters. Spanish to me said sombrero. Put a sombrero on the head of the fish. Got to make it warlike. What do we do now? Well, our tool of war is a torpedo. We took a torpedo under the fin, put a sombrero on its head, and there was a symbol. And I took that back to the captain. He said, "Oh, got to see what it looks like, Zeke." And therein lies another problem. I'm an engineer, not an artist. Give me a T-square and triangles and I'll draw you something, but not a fish. So I went to the yeoman and I described what the outline of the fish was like, showed him a picture, told him what I wanted, the sombrero, etc. See if he could come up with a sketch. And there was a little argument as to whether he did the sketch or somebody else in the crew did. I think probably it was a combination of the two. And we ended up with a pen and ink outline of the proposed Cavalla symbol. Took it back to the captain. He looked at it and said, "It looks all right. We'll do that one." So then I took that symbol that we had drawn in black and white ink. It was a circle with the Cavalla fish in it, with a sombrero on the head and the torpedo, down to New London Day, the newspaper publisher. And they made some cuts for us that we could use for printing the ship's commissioning program when that time came, and for stationery and so on. And so we were in business. This is before Disney became the cartoonist of value for submarines. The time was such insecurity, you did not, in fact, make patches and wear them on your uniform. Any identification of what ship you were from was stripped from your uniform. The sailor's hat used to have a little ribbon around it that said USS Cavalla or whatever ship they were on. Now it said U.S. Navy, period. So we couldn't make patches on it, but we did stretch it a little bit on stationery. And that stretch was fortunate because I used that stationery to write home and to some friends. And lo and behold, when Cavalla finally got to sea, was on her third patrol, in the mail came a silk battle flag with the Cavalla symbol on it from one girl that I knew, and from her cousin, a silver ring with a symbol on it. Cavalla went out of commission in 1947, and with her went all the knowledge of the symbol. It was not something that was official. It didn't have any approval from higher authority as required now, and so it remained only in the hearts and memories of the shipmates that had used it. Cavalla came back in commission in 1951, and they created a new symbol for her, which was somewhat different, but it did have still that old torpedo under the fin, or in what later generated into almost an arm. And so over the period of the time from Cavalla's recommissioning in 51 to her final decommissioning in 68, she had some 6 different symbols, all modifications of that first one from 1951. So that's the story of the symbol.